The Shark Deck.
Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Joke Man, the documentary with Jackie the Joke Man, is out today on iTunes and Amazon. Go to jokemanmovie.com for more information. And if you missed it, on the July 11th episode of this podcast, Jackie and I spoke for about 40 minutes. On today's podcast, an interview with Alonzo Bodden that I really, really enjoyed. So we'll do that in the second half. If you came for Alonzo because you saw him in the episode title, that'll be at the end of today's podcast. Maria Bamford's got a new album. It's called Crowd Pleaser. Light spoilers here. Cracked tells us the album kicks off with Maria ingratiating herself to her Chicago Comedy Club audience, rattling off local references designed to endear her to the crowd. Hot dog, wind, pizza, architecture, improv. Come on, everybody. It's a throwaway bit of goofy meta-comedy that deconstructs hacky crowd work, somehow poking fun at both herself and America's Second City before she even gets started. A lot of the material likely echoes what we'll find in Sure I'll Join Your Cult. That's one of her other albums. There are bits about the rigidity and sometimes ridiculousness of 12-step programs, several of which she's been a not-so-great member. The group's insistence on anonymity and privacy doesn't come easily to Bamford. She jokes nothing says safety more than secrets. Rainn Wilson was on with Bill Maher on his pod, and an interesting answer from Rainn. He said, when I was in the office, I spent several years really mostly unhappy because it wasn't enough. I'm realizing now, I'm on a hit show, Emmy nominated every year, making lots of money, working with Steve Carell and Jenna Fisher and John Krasinski and these amazing writers and incredible directors. I'm on one of the great TV shows. People love it. I wasn't enjoying it. I was thinking about, why am I not a movie star? Why am I not the next Jack Black or next Will Ferrell? How come I can't have a movie career? Why don't I have a development deal? When I was on The Office, I was clutching and grasping at, all right, I was making hundreds of thousands. I wanted millions, and I was a TV star, but I wanted to be a movie star. It was never enough. Humans have lived for hundreds of thousands of years, and never enough has helped us as a species. Variety asked Mark Normand if there are any topics that he stays away from. Mark said, not really. I just stay away from being totally mean to a group. It's still got to be a joke. It's still got to be a punchline. I think you can make jokes with any group. But if it's just totally negative and hurtful, I don't think it's well crafted. It's not really about the topic to me. It's about the way you go about it. Variety asked him about clean material, and Mark Normand said, I think clean material is important because it's good for work. Some people won't listen to dirty comics the same way they won't watch dark R-rated movies. It's good to have. And people say, oh, I'm so funny. And I'm like, are you funny enough to write a clean joke about dogs for Thanksgiving? Because it's actually really challenging. So even if you don't like clean material, I'd recommend challenging yourself to try it. And it's really hard, and it's a good exercise. Anybody can make a million penis jokes, but if you can really get a clean one out there, then that's just another feather in your cap. Seinfeld was a really good lesson because he's a huge hero of mine. He has a certain way he wants a show, and it's his show, and I'm happy to be on it, so you have to adapt to his rules. Friday asked Mark how he connected with Netflix for Soup to Nuts. That's his upcoming special, and Mark said, 10 years of grinding. Then I got a Comedy Central special, and I got a half-hour special, then an hour, then Comedy Central fills it out as technology changes, and here comes this Netflix thing, and then it's the new HBO. So you go, well, I'd love to get to Netflix, but I'm nobody. So you got to do the YouTube route just to prove yourself. And then through that, I did well. So then Netflix was like, hey, we'll give you a half hour just to test you again. I did a half hour, which was tough because it was in the middle of a pandemic. It was hard to put it together, but we pulled it off. Then I got the hour. Eventually, that half hour did well enough. It helped ticket sales. So I hit the road like a psycho, like a wild man. I was doing all these weird cities in the middle of the country, just going out there with nothing. And an hour was always like the carrot on the stick. Like, I don't want to write today. Well, you might get an hour one day on Netflix, so keep going and suck it up. So I threw a bunch of stuff together and pulled it off, and then when I heard I was getting an hour, I really doubled down. I had to hone it, tweak it, pull it out. He said when you get a Netflix show, it's a little disbelief. It's one of those weird things like when you're 17, you're into a girl, and your friend goes, hey, she actually likes you back. And you're like, get out of here. I couldn't believe it. The Las Vegas Weekly did a puff piece about Las Vegas comedy. They talked to a couple names here. And Jimmy Kimmel, who grew up in Las Vegas, said, you think back to the olden days with Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis and Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. and Joey Bishop. This was the place you wanted to be if you were a comic. Now it is again. Coincidentally, Jimmy Kimmel has his own club in Las Vegas. Jimmy said, I think there was a stigma attached to performing in Vegas. I don't know what the reason was, but it doesn't exist anymore. Comics realize it's a way to be on the road when you're not on the road. You could have an entirely different audience every night. Las Vegan Lindsay Glazer is a stand-up comic, and Lindsay agrees, saying some nights you've got 20 cowboys from Montana in the audience with 50 people from New York, a bachelorette party, a wedding party, and 4 Michael Jackson impersonators. Apparently, Vegas comedy's leveled up. Weekly late-night show The Dirty happens at 12:30 at the South Point Showroom. That just celebrated its 10th anniversary. Don't Tell Comedy delivers pop-up shows around town. Glazer says in Vegas, because of the level of comedy here, you have to pretty much do your A material all the time in the clubs. She likes the club Wise Guys. It's one of the only places that has open mics on Tuesday and Wednesday where you can develop new material in front of real audiences. Glazer says, people are like, comics only have to work 1 hour a day. He says, no, we actually write our bits, then we do our social media, and then we send out 50 million booking emails. We do all that, and then we go on stage for an hour. Jeff Civilico has a new special out on Dry Bar. It's called Comedy in Action. Speaking of Vegas, he was named Best of Las Vegas by the Las Vegas Review-Journal 3 years in a row, Entertainer of the Year by Vegas Inc., and the Total Vegas Guide had him on top 10 things to do in Vegas, which is fascinating because think of some of the other 9 things you might do. Comedy in Action is a delightful blend of physical comedy, action-packed stunts, and world-class juggling/balancing. If you want to check it out, go to Dry Bar Comedy Plus. Use the promo code Jeff Civilico, Civilico, and you get a month free.
Hi, I'm Mark Francis and host of a new podcast, The Messi Effect. Join us as we take you into the exciting new world of Argentine soccer phenomenon, Lionel Messi. And his new life at Inter Miami will bring you into the glitz, the glamour, the star-studded events, along with the exciting journey to a new world of U.S. soccer and international football with news and stories 3 times a week. Come along for the ride as Messi, Miami, and Major League Soccer experience the journey of a lifetime. Get the Messi Effect wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Erica, 1/3 of the podcast Books and Betches, a comedy book podcast where we swear, spoil, and we talk about...
Whoa, you cannot say that in this.
What do you mean? That's our slogan. It's our gimmick.
How about we just give some examples of things we talk about?
Well, there's a lot of chaos.
I'm Kristen, and with me I have...
Whopper!
No.
A lot of sidebar conversations.
Are you denying the existence of chupacabras?
You know, Erica, yes, I am.
You can listen to new episodes of the Books and Betches podcast every Tuesday morning, anywhere you get your podcasts.
Just for Laughs Montreal starts to kick off tonight. 2 shows, Just for the Culture at 7 o'clock and The Nasty Show at 9:30. Just for the Culture features a diverse lineup of comedians from various cultural backgrounds and experiences. Your host is Alonzo Bodden. You're going to hear my interview with him in just a second. Just for the Culture, an all-killer, no-filler night of comedy from some of the biggest multicultural acts in North America. Here's Alonzo. I wanted to talk to you about Queens. I'm from Jackson Heights. You lived at St. Albans and you went to Aviation High School.
Yes.
I want to guess on that commute. Is that a bus to Jamaica, F train, E train, transfer at 74th? Or what did you do? That's a long haul.
Yeah. You take the E or the F, you transfer at Roosevelt. I think it was Roosevelt Heights, where you transfer to the 7.
Yeah. 74th Street. Yep.
Yeah. Then you take the 7 to 33rd. So, yeah, I was a commuter. Actually, in my senior year, a lot of times I rode my bicycle. I rode up Queens Boulevard.
From St. Albans to Aviation,
Yeah.
that's a hike. I mean, the part was an hour 15, I'm sure.
I was one of those bicycle nuts back in the day in New York. You know, we used to ride through Manhattan with our whistles and stuff like that. Yeah, I was one of those guys. So it would take about, I'm trying to remember now, it's been a long time ago, but about 45 minutes to ride to school. So
that's not a bad ride down Queens Boulevard. I mean, now you've got proper bike lanes. It'd be a breeze.
Yeah, now it would be. Well, I don't know. It was fun then. You have bike lanes now, but then you have people hating the bike lanes and trying to kill you in the bike lane. So I don't know which is more dangerous: not having a bike lane and being aware of it, or having a bike lane and people want to kill you.
So I like the bike lane. The issue with the bike lane is it pushed the curbside parking out further. So if you're driving a car, you can pull up to a corner and you have to like stick your neck out and look, way deep. But Montreal, they've got their bike game together. They've got proper bike lanes.
Yeah, because they're used to it. It's like, I don't know if you've ever been to Portland. You ever been to Portland?
No.
You better watch out. When they have green bike lanes, those bikes don't stop. Those bikes will take you out. Because there's a lot of bike commuters and bike riders, and Montreal's the same way. Plus, Montreal, they're Canadians. They're just nicer. They don't wake up saying, "Who can I run over today?" In New York, it's like, "All right, I'm going to get somebody." It's a different.
Since we jumped over to Montreal, I saw some interview somewhere you quoting on, and I agree with you, the nice looking ladies in Montreal. The first time I went up there, I noticed that women who were more mature were really taking care of themselves. There are some nice looking women up. If you go walking around Mount Royal, they take care of themselves up there.
They are beautiful. The women of Montreal are absolutely beautiful. I used to joke that, everybody wanted to go to strip clubs. I'm like, it's redundant. Just walk around. There are stunningly beautiful women wearing, sexy outfits and this and that. It's really great. And a friend who lives there, he told me, he said, listen, they're wearing a coat 9 months out of the year. So when they get to take that coat off, they're going for it. And I like, thank you. Thank you, Montreal. You're a beautiful city.
That makes sense because I only go there in July. I used to say the same thing. People would tell me how cold Chicago was, and I'd be out there when JFL had the Chicago Fest, which I think was June. I'm like, I don't know, Chicago in June's pretty great.
Yeah, I've been to Chicago in January. I've been to Montreal in the winter, but by far the winter is Winnipeg. Winnipeg is so cold that Canadians don't go to Winnipeg. Canadians are like, the hell's wrong with you? Why would you go there?
The thing I find fascinating with Montreal is it's this mix of pseudo-Europe, 1976's version of the future. Like, that's a good place to shoot your sci-fi movie by some of those projects. And then the I don't care, we're going to have a porn shop next to a 4-star restaurant.
Well, I always say that, Montreal is a combination of European style, right? Nice Canadian people who they're nice to us. Apparently, the French Canadians are not nice to other Canadians, but they're very nice to us as visitors, and the convenience of the United States. So it's really just a great city. It does have different parts that look different ways. I love old Montreal. I could walk around old Montreal all day, every day, and just soak it up. It just feels like you're in Europe.
Yeah, it's a great city. All right, so you're doing Montreal. You're hosting Just for the Culture, we're calling it, formerly known as the Ethnic Show. And that's been in the press release for maybe 10, 15 years now, formerly known as the Ethnic Show. So, I get why they wanted to change the name, but then they keep bringing up formerly known as the Ethnic Show. And I don't understand it. I don't know what Just for the Culture is. I get why they're moving away from it. But what is Just for the Culture?
So, this is what's really funny, and this is how old time I am at the festival. Dom Herrera and I were joking about when each culture had its own show. Okay, there was a time at the festival where you had the Uptown show was Black culture, and the Wise Guys show was Italian, and I forget the name, but they had a Jewish. We used to each have our own, and then they put them all together and they called it the Ethnic Show. And from what I understand, there was some politician that was using the term ethnic derogatory. He was like, I didn't get elected because the ethnics voted for this or the ethnic that. And that's when they said, okay, we got to change it to for the culture. So now, instead of each making fun of each ethnicity, we make fun of each culture, which is much more proper.
Formerly known as. But that was always a thing. Yeah, chocolate sundaes or Asian invasions.
Yeah.
I guess you don't see as much of that now, but that was always a thing.
Yeah, you don't see it as much, but it still exists. And it's still, here's the thing I love about comics with different cultures. They make fun of their own culture. That's what's great about it. And listen, I've learned more about the Jewish culture from Jewish comedians than I ever could any other way, because they make fun of every Jewish holiday and every, custom and this and that. And it's apparently, now you're going to be surprised to hear this, John, but apparently Asian parents did not want their kids to be comics because Asian comics always remind me of that, and it's great though. It's really fun because everyone has fun with their own culture. And as you know, comedians, we have a ball with it. We laugh at each other. We laugh at ourselves. If a comedian's ever not laughing at you, if we're not picking on you, then you get nervous. Then you're like, wow, they really don't they didn't insult me at all,
So when you're up there this year, you're hosting, it's a pretty big room, real event. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. I'll try and use an athlete's term. So last year when I was up at New Faces watching Pete Holmes, seen Pete a million times, and I felt like he was, and I don't mean this in a negative way, I felt like he was throwing 70-80% like it was the All-Star game. Like, I could fire back and go 105, but I'm just going to hang out a little bit and feel the crowd and use my A- material. Again, I don't mean that as a dig. I just felt like he was deliberately not going to his top.
Oh no, I'll swing for the fences. But when you're the host, it's not all about material. Like when I do material, I'm gonna do my great material. But I'm gonna welcome them. I'm gonna joke with people in the crowd. I'm gonna try to keep the show moving. So that's the kind of thing where, as a host, Jay Leno, who has hosted a show or two for a little while, he told me, he said, always remember your guest is the star. That was good advice to me. Your guest is a star. So part of my job is to set up the comics so that they look good and make it about them, make it about each comic that I introduce. It's not all about me. But when I'm joking, I'm going to joke. Now, the funny thing with New Faces, now I've hosted it and I've been a new face. They're almost worried that you'll be too funny. They're like, wait a minute, I'm a rookie. You're Pete Holmes. If you pull out your A material, I'm going to. So when you host New Faces, you're really trying to be encouraging because they are, various points in their career, but relatively new. Just for the culture, it's like, you're good enough. I can make fun of you.
All right. Yeah, thanks. That makes a lot of sense to me. You're doing, I'm trying to keep my eye on you, not scroll down on my notes. Are you doing any of the galas? And I'm a New Yorker. I always want to say gala.
Year. No, this year I'm not doing a gala. I'm always on the bench. If somebody, breaks a leg, I'm ready to jump in. But no, this year is about for the culture. And then I always pick up a few guest spots on shows while I'm there. They tell me I'm part of the furniture of Montreal now. I guess I am. I've been to the festival a few times.
I was listening to some of your other interviews. I think you were on with George Lopez when this came up. It might have been Papa.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Papa. But the point was, and your interview was from a few months back, but it related to, I recently watched a special by, I'm not here to tear anyone down, and I was watching it and I'm like, I think the comedian's body language is pulling the material up a little bit. And I heard you, I can't remember if it was Tom or with George, and you talked about wanting to just strip it down and have a microphone and a stool and let the work speak for itself rather than mugging for the camera or using the body work. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So, that's Tom's style. Actually, it's George. We're the monologists, right? We stand at the microphone and talk. Other comics have huge energy. They're jumping around on stage. They're doing this and that. And the physicality brings more to their material. There are some comics that without the physicality, the material would be a recital. And I mean, if Tom moves 3 feet in a 1 hour show, that's a long walk for him. Tom will literally just stand at the mic and talk. And I love that. And that's kind of how I came up, And the other thing is I'm a big guy, all right, 6'3", over 250. If I'm jumping around on the stage, the front row's pretty nervous. The front row's like, can you just take it down a notch? We don't need you stage diving, so there's that. But it's just different styles. And I came up in the monologist style where you stood there and talk. I mean, Stephen Wright. Now you talk about someone who didn't move, whose words, commanded the room. I mean, that was it. So,
yeah, I'm a big Bob Hope fan. And I know the last 25 years of Hope's career get dragged through the mud for some of the NBC specials. But I go back and listen to that older stuff where he's just quick and rat-a-tat-tat, and it could be 6-year-old material, be like, hey, we're at the Cleveland Air Force Base, General Johnson is really cheap, and he'll mug a little bit. And don't get a laugh at me, I don't know who the general was, but it's just that art of comedy and knowing how to perform and do it. I think he was great.
Well, I think every comic learns their own material and their own style. You know what I mean? Like if I'm trying to do Bobby Lee, that ain't gonna work. Ain't gonna work. Bobby Lee does Bobby Lee. I can't do Bobby Lee, and Bobby Lee's not gonna do me. It's so you develop that. And yeah, mugging after the joke was part of Bob Hope's thing, And listen, I love the old pros. When people talk about one of the old pros not being funny, it's like, well, you're judging him or her like they walked out on stage today. I mean, you got to understand at that time, That's what they were doing. That's what they were talking about. And these people were brilliantly funny. And then you have the other thing, the cancel culture, which, by the way, if you know anyone, John, I've been trying to get canceled because I need publicity. So if there's in any way you can help me get canceled doing this interview, I would appreciate it. But if you're going to judge a joke from 1983, like Eddie Murphy said, if he did Raw today, it wouldn't be the same language. But in 1982, 83, whenever that came out, it was brilliant and it was funny. And here's the thing. Everyone knew he didn't mean it. It's like, Eddie Murphy hates gay people. No, he doesn't. No, Eddie Murphy doesn't hate anybody. They were jokes of the time. So I don't buy into all of that judgment on old comics and old pros. And was there some mugging and hamming it up with Jack Benny? Every joke, right? After every joke, he just stopped and gave you that sarcastic look. That was part of the joke. Rodney Dangerfield, he never tightened his tie, right? It was always with the tie. It's what they do. It's mannerisms. It's great.
Any young guys out there these days that might be off my radar sitting here in the basement that you're into?
Man, it's I see a lot of young comics. I don't remember all the names of everybody. I love Mal Hall, Liz Mealy. Liz is fantastic, young woman out of New York. But honestly, I couldn't do justice because I don't remember names. But there's a lot of young comics, and I like what they're doing. And it's a different generation, right? Different vibes. So they're doing a lot of social media and sketches and stuff like that besides stand up. So, good for them. I mean, it's again, different generation, different vibe.
As a veteran, do you lose your mind when you see somebody who's been doing it for 3 minutes has 375 trillion TikTok views for one joke?
There is, you know what it's become? And you're old enough to remember the 80s, John. Remember one-hit wonders?
Yeah, oh yeah.
There are now one-bit wonders. There's nothing you can do about it. It's one-bit wonder. They have a joke or a bit or something on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and a billion people see it and a billion people love it, and then they get on stage and it's like, okay, there's a lot of filler until they get to that joke. I don't really have time to get mad about it. Even with me, like I have a social person who helps me with social media, and she'll say, wow, you got 2 million views on that bit. And I'm like, okay, now get me in an arena and have all 2 million people show up.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
But you talk about the one-hit wonders, somebody like yourself or George or Pop or a lot of these people we've talked about, I could wake you up out of bed and go, hey, don't worry about why I need you to do 40 minutes right now. You got it. One of the things on your resume is Last Comic Standing. That show came along when I used to run SiriusXM comedy. And, people would come up to me and be like, hey, you ought to play so-and-so. They killed on TV last night. And I'd be like, that person has 5 seconds of material. And that's what they put in the special. And, a lot of yourself, one of them, people came out of that show and have had really great careers. But there were a lot of people that had 1 joke, 2 jokes. I teach a college class and I'm not a comedian at all, in case you can't tell. I will illustrate to the students that I can say something really vulgar about punching someone in a body part and I'll get a laugh out of the class. And I'm like, I didn't even set that up. I just said something shocking, so I made you laugh for 3 seconds, but I'm not a comic.
Yeah, well, Last Comic was interesting. So the first season, they had a rule like you couldn't have done a comedy special. And I don't think you couldn't have done a Tonight Show. And they had a lot of beginners. And what they found out was, if you've been doing comedy 2-3 years, you're not ready for TV yet. You're certainly not ready for a sustained act. And then some of the winners, they went on tour and it was like, they don't have 45 minutes. They can't close. So when we did it, we were all headliners. We were all veterans. I think the newest comic we had been doing it for like 8 years. So we were ready, and the other thing I learned was, you're always writing. George Wallace, who's one of my mentors and heroes, you will never see him without that yellow pad. I explained to him we use computers and tablets now, but he's an old man. But no, he always had the yellow pad. He was always writing. The guys who taught me this. They were like, man, you got to be writing all the time because you want to stay relevant. You don't want to be, it's 2023. If you still have a VCR joke, you're probably not going to get much work. Yeah, we know the light flashes 12. That's very funny.
So what do you actually use yourself? A notepad on a phone?
Yeah, I shifted over from notebooks to using notes on my phone and on my tablet, my mini tablet, which I carry all the time. And the reason is writing it out, physically writing it, imprints it on the memory. So that was always great because it trained my mind to remember the joke. But the nice thing about the digital notes is it's easy to file, categorize, and find stuff because all you got to do is put in a word. Like if I put in JFL and Just for Laughs, all of my Just for Laughs sets come up. So I'm like, oh, okay, I can't do this. I did that joke or, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of stuff. That's where the digital stuff makes it easier for me because I was never one to listen. Some comics would have index cards and they would file them and they would have their, these are my jokes about travel. These are my jokes about being married. And I was like, man, I'm not that organized. I'll just write some new ones. I can't be looking that up. I'll just write some new ones and let's hope this works.
So do the new ones, they're in a document and then, at some point, I guess when you're putting together a new set, are you looking at that and going, okay, let me sequence this, call back, go work it out, build it out?
I date the sets and then I'll have like new jokes. I'll have a thing I call random ideas and stuff like that. And I'll pull from that. And then sometimes I'll be going through sets and I'll see a joke from, 5 years ago. And I'll be like, oh, wait, that's still funny. Let me bring that one back. And then I'll start doing it again. And then it'll change some doing it now, just, because it's running through my mind differently. The funniest thing to me is when a fan remembers a bit that I have no idea what they're talking about.
Wow.
I'll never forget somebody said, man, I love your tank bit. And I was like, I have no idea what the tank bit is. If you start it, I'll remember it. But now my favorite joke is always the newest one I'm working on. So
it's funny with fans, even, in a radio career, you'll meet a listener and they'll be like, hey, how's your cat Fluffy? And you're like, how do you know my cat's name is Fluffy? And the answer is because you mentioned the cat once in 1998 at 6 a.m. And fans just latch on to stuff.
It's amazing and it's fantastic. But I do it too. A lot of comics, we know each other by material. It's like, do you know blah, blah, blah? And it's like, who? And then he does the thing about the cat driving a car. You're like, oh yeah, I know that guy. We remember that. And then the guys who I watched coming up, Dom Herrera, George Wallace, George Lopez, guys like I can remember their jokes from the 90s because I was latching on to what they were doing back then when I was just starting out, So I can recite some of their old material that they've absolutely forgotten. And then I can use it because they forgot they wrote it.
Alonzo Bodden, thank you for coming on Daily Comedy News. And that is your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you're on YouTube, you got to ring the bell and smash the like button. Get me more followers over there so I can monetize a little. I like money. See you tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Mark Francis and host of a new podcast, The Messy Effect. Join us as we take you into the exciting new world of Argentine soccer phenomenon, Lionel Messi. And his new life at Inter Miami will bring you into the glitz, the glamour, the star-studded events, along with the exciting journey to a new world of U.S. soccer and international football with news and stories 3 times a week. Come along for the ride as Messi, Miami, and Major League Soccer experience the journey of a lifetime. Get the Messi Effect wherever you get your podcasts.